This episode is brought to you by the all-new NAD M10 V2. Featuring a size-defying and conservatively rated 100 watts per channel of amplification, the M10 V2 sets a new standard in audio.
Okay, so one of my patrons messaged me about this album by Public Service Broadcasting. It's excellent. It's an electronic music album in the sort of loose vein of Tangerine Dream. The Kraftwerk influences hang heavy on this record because a lot of it's in German. There are lots of references to Berlin. Even the first track is called Der Sumpf, which means the swamp, because Berlin is essentially built on a swamp. Anyway, I've been listening to this album this morning. I think it just started behind me. I don't want to get a copyright strike. Let me pause that using Rune's new home screen controls. There we go. I've been listening to Public Service Broadcasting with a pair of Lumina II loudspeakers made by SONUS FABER. So they come from Italy. Now, I didn't take a loaner on these. I wanted to have these around for the long haul. So basically more than the usual 3 months or 2 months review loaner. So I bought them. I purchased this pair. I had not heard them. I just bought them based upon SONUS FABER's reputation. And I just thought they were the perfect stand mount speaker that I like to cover, you know, around the sort of $1,500, €1,000 mark, a bit like the KEF LS50 Meta, which is right next to Olaf over here. I'll be talking about those a bit later on as well. The first thing you notice is that the Lumina II are wrapped in leather, apart from the front baffle, which is multi-layered wood. It's a two-way with a 2.9 centimeter tweeter featuring SONUS FABER's DAD assembly. I love this. I love that it's called DAD. But DAD means damped apex dome. And DAD is implemented to extend the treble response of the speaker. At least that's what SONUS FABER told me. The mid-bass driver is 15 centimeters. It is made of pulp, so essentially paper. And that results in a bass response of -3 dB at 55 Hertz. So obviously these are not bass monsters, not at all. And I think it's also, it's time we call time on being surprised at how much bass come out of a stand mount loudspeaker. And actually, it's not the case with these. It's like on paper, they're rated at 55 Hertz and you can listen to them and go, yeah, that's about right. There's not like, oh my God, I can't believe how much low frequency extension I'm getting. No, you need a sub with these if you want to go lower than that. And I would recommend that if that's your thing, but you don't have to. On the back, 2 sets of binding posts for people that like to do bi-wiring, bi-amping, that kind of thing. That is absolutely not my bag at all. But what is my bag, what does kind of pique my interest here, is that there is no port. And there's no real obvious port on the front until you look at the slitted thing along the bottom, and that's where the reflex action comes out of the speaker. Now, I'm not going to talk about amplifier matching in this video. However, you should know that these loudspeakers are rated as 86 dB efficient, which is kind of average for a stand mount loudspeaker, but they are 4 ohm nominal. So I think a little bit of care needs to be taken when choosing an amplifier to partner with them. And I think it's quite appropriate that Italian speakers are sitting on Italian stands. These are the solid steel SS6. They're the white sort of like tripod-y type stands. I bought them because I just think they look fantastic. And that's the only reason. The price, €1,100 per pair. And these have been quite slow to come to Europe. I think the Lumina 2 were available in the USA long before they were here. And I'm about to break a rule that I always set myself, is never repeat yourself in a video. Never say, as I said earlier. However, as I said earlier, this is not a bass weighty speaker. But the bass that it does give us, like all good stand mounts, suggests a lower bass. But the bass it actually does give us is delivered with a very strong 6-inch punch. And that punchy bass leads us to one of, but not the, standout quality for me of the Lumina 2 from SONUS FABER. In that if we play something like Plastikman's Conception, which is very minimal ambient techno, we get to hear how strong microdynamics are, and also how good their sort of sense of rhythmic propulsion is. And it's a dynamic presence that I think recalls the best of Klipsch loudspeakers. And if you are looking to level up from a Klipsch RP600M that I've reviewed before, then I think it's worth a look at these speakers first of all. Probably ahead of any other stand mount loudspeaker. No, I don't want to say that because I don't really know all of the stand mount loudspeakers above the Klipsch. But yeah, if you like the Klipsch and you want to go the next level, consider the Lumina 2 from SONUS FABER. Adding to this speaker's dynamic excitement is its, I think, best quality. And that's a slight lift in the upper mids / lower treble, because that gives us a stronger presence than your average stand mount loudspeaker. And I have to clarify before we go any further that this presence is never annoying, and it's not harsh or bright or any of those things. It's just a little bit of a push to kind of pop things out into the room a little bit further, make them a little bit more obvious. So if we play something like the Pixies Trompe le Monde, so their final album before they broke up and then reformed and kind of got a bit shit, we note a very strong sense of excitement. This speaker is an edge of the seat speaker, so it's not just lean forward, it's edge of the seat. It really is thrilling to listen to. And for the Pixies, I guess American punk rock or American art rock, I don't know what you really call it now. Dad rock maybe? Yeah, I guess it's that. It's just scintillating. You just sit there and it really does grab you, to use a cliche, grab you and it doesn't let go. So the Lumina 2 are a loudspeaker that really mainline the drama and excitement of music. And for me, that was a complete surprise, because my expectations ahead of hearing them was that SONUS FABER made kind of slightly warm, slightly mellow loudspeakers. And for these, that is absolutely not the case. And this ever so slight lift to the upper mid-range / lower treble also lends greater intelligibility to voices when using the Lumina 2 as TV speakers, so when watching Netflix or YouTube. It just makes voices much easier to understand, and that is another win. But maybe it's not just a slightly elevated upper mid-range that, you know, really helps voices be better understood, better heard, because it could also be the Lumina 2's slightly lower crossover point. So that's the frequency where the tweeter is crossed over with the mid bass driver. Now on these, on the Lumina 2, it's 1.8 kilohertz, and that is lower than the average frequency that you find on a lot of other stand mount loudspeakers. Now what that means is that the tweeter is therefore doing more mid-range than on those other sort of typical stand mount loudspeakers. So maybe that's why voices are easier to understand and why this speaker sounds a lot more exciting than other loudspeakers. Talking of other stand mounts, it'd be rude of me to have the LS50 Meta from KEF in-house and not compare them to the Lumina 2. After all, they sell for very similar money. And I think there are 5 key differences between the SONUS FABER Lumina II and the KEF LS50 Meta. The first is obvious. If you're watching this video, it's screamingly obvious in that these two loudspeakers do not look anything like each other. They look completely different. The LS50 Meta looks like a more modern type speaker suited to modern homes. And I would say that the Lumina II are designed in a more traditional way that might suit a more traditional lounge room aesthetic. Number 2, because the SONUS FABER are front ported, we can put them closer to the front wall, that's the one behind me, if we wish. So they're probably easier to accommodate in smaller listening spaces. And obviously if you push them closer to the front wall, you get a little bit more bass reinforcement. So if you do end up getting a pair of these, try the wall proximity effect first before reaching for a sub. Going back to that Plastikman track and the album that it's from, I think it's Music, plus some drum and bass from an outfit called Downpour, we note that the LS50 go a bit lower than the SONUS FABER. They have a bit more weight and push behind them. It's not a big difference, but it is, yeah, it's noticeable, but it's not night and day, as, you know, as I keep crapping on about. Number 4, the KEF communicate a greater sense of neutrality. That doesn't mean they are more neutral. It's just that to me, they seem to be more neutral. Their sound is a bit more even. And it's quite obvious from listening to the SONUS FABER and hearing that slightly elevated upper mid lower treble that they are not neutral. They are colored, but that doesn't make them any less of a speaker. I know that will come as a shock to some people who only sort of insist on having the most neutral gear available. But I've got news for you. Stuff that's colored, it can be just as much fun to listen to. Now I know some of you think that I just sit here listening to nothing but noodly electronic music. Obviously my reference to the Pixies today gives light to that, but so does an album that I was playing yesterday. An album that many audiophiles know, but not in this form, because Donald Fagen has just issued a live version of The Nightfly. And it's a bit looser than the studio album, but it's really, really cool, and I really love this album. And I was playing it whilst going back and forth between the KEF and the SONUS FABER yesterday. And another key difference is that I think the KEF image slightly better in the mid-range with voices, which is kind of ironic given how excellent the Lumina II are with voices. But they don't image quite as well as the KEF do. And to that end, I think the KEF LS50 Meta is the most technically accomplished of these two loudspeakers. However, the SONUS FABER Lumina II, for me, are the most enjoyable, especially for albums like David Bowie's Diamond Dogs, which is an album that's shot through with tension, and a tension that the Lumina II excel in communicating, especially on tracks like Candidate and Sweet Thing that are also kind of full of dread as well, sort of apocalyptic dread, which are themes that run all the way through this album. And that extra clarity in the upper mid-range allows us to hear more obviously Mike Garson's piano over here or Herbie Flowers' bass over there. There is more overt separation in those frequency ranges. When I say Herbie Flowers' bass, I mean like the higher notes of the bass, not the really deep bass. But if you go and listen to those tracks, you'll know what I mean. And those ingredients make listening to Diamond Dogs through these loudspeakers a truly, truly thrilling listen. Especially when the saxophone hits. It's just like, mwah, it's just perfect. It's so good. It's so exciting. The Lumina II have permanently altered, for the better, my enjoyment and appreciation of Bowie's Diamond Dogs, but also the album Vertical Ascent by the Moritz von Oswald trio, because the Lumina II really accentuate the percussion that peppers this area in the soundstage. And lastly, the Lumina II also add more overt synthesizer shimmer to the work of public service broadcasting, especially when these speakers, these Lumina II, are paired with the Naim Uniti Atom. But that's a story for another day. Anyway, if you like this video, please hit the like button down below. If you like my attitude towards high-end audio, in that I am not an obsessive when it comes to supposed neutrality, I think you can really enjoy stuff that's coloured, because let's face it, everything is coloured to some degree. Everything. But some things are more obvious than others. I think that's the case with the Lumina II from SONUS FABER, but it absolutely enhances their subjective enjoyability. Is that a word? Enjoyability? Subjective enjoyment is the word I'm looking for. So yeah, if you dig that, please subscribe to this channel. And as always, thank you ever so much for watching.